Hello, sexy souls, and welcome back to another chat. I'm so happy you're here, and I'm sending you so much love and light as always. My name is Maya Amar, and I'm a trauma, manifestation, and embodiment coach here to help you heal, grow, and manifest all your beautiful desires. Thank you for taking the step today towards creating your ideal life, one step at a time. Today, we are talking all things attachment styles. What an attachment style is, what the 4 kinds of attachment styles are, and how each and every one affects us. So what are attachment styles? Attachment styles are the expectations people develop about their relationships and how they should be. And this is created based off of the relationship we had with our primary caregivers. So that is most likely our parents or whoever raised you. You learned your relationship and your attachment style based off of the relationship you had with your caregivers. And this doesn't just apply to, our human relationships. It can also apply to how you attach to materialistic things and how you attach to your goals, to your pets even. And there's 4 different kinds, and each one of us affects us differently. Attachment styles in general also affect people in different ways, but the most important thing we need to know is that we most likely inherited our attachment style from the type of parenting that we received when we were a child. So how does our attachment style affect our relationships? Depending on the style that you have, it can affect each relationship differently, especially if the 2 people in that relationship have 2 different attachment styles. And we're not just talking romantic relationships, we're talking any kind of relationship. And like I said, even relationships with our goals or materialistic things that we may attach ourselves to. But what I really want to talk about today is attachment trauma. And attachment trauma is not talked about enough, in my opinion, because we just disregard it as like, oh, that's just who I am, as like a characteristic thing. But like I said, we develop our attachment style based off of the relationship that we had with our parents. So if we didn't have a healthy attachment to our parents growing up and they didn't show us what a healthy attachment looks like, then we could develop a very negative one, and then we can develop attachment trauma, which will then lead to more distress in our relationships and in our future. So what does attachment trauma look like? It can look like, having trouble regulating your emotions. It can lead you to be more susceptible to stress. It can be, relating to difficulty sleeping, difficulty cultivating healthy relationship. You can be impulsive. You can depend on people too much. You can attach too quickly, or you cannot attach at all. And then you could be very detached, and just distant from everything that you really care about. And it can really just downward spiral into things that can almost seem like they are out of our control. But in reality, we do have control over them. It's just about cultivating a healthy way to heal that attachment trauma. So the first attachment style is a secure attachment. Now, this is the one that is deemed to be the most healthy, because those who have a secure attachment styles have no trust issues. They have no trouble cultivating trust in relationships. They have no trouble cultivating acceptance and kindness and caring and achieving intimacy easily and not having anxiousness, and overall having a secure attachment to the person with a healthy amount of dependency. So they don't depend on the person too much, and they also don't avoid the person. So this is what we call the secure attachment. Next, we have insecure attachment. And this is usually marked by a deep fear of abandonment. People who have insecure attachment styles tend to be very insecure in themselves, in their relationships. They often fear that their partner is going to abandon them, even if it's something very small, even if it's a small disagreement. They can feel like their partner can abandon them at any moment. They tend to be more self-conscious and more clingy to their partner and to the relationship, just out of the fear that their partner is going to abandon them. They usually develop a lot of anxiety around the relationship. They can at times be a little too trusting because they just cling on to somebody or to something so much and often very quickly. And then they freak out as soon as they feel like their partner might abandon them, or the thing that they really wanted is going to slip out of their hands, or whatever it may be. And this is usually developed by a parental relationship where they were neglected and abandoned as a child, where the parent wasn't very responsive, or the parent could have been very unpredictable in their love, or let's say they showed a lot of love and then we're like, you know what, I need my space now. So it wasn't a consistent amount of love and care from the parent, and they withdrew a lot, and that is what makes this person feel like somebody can abandon them. And they also tend to see that a lot in their relationships, or they may have experienced it from family members and friends, just people leaving their lives with or without explanation. And this over time develops a very insecure attachment to people. Then we have avoidant attachment, or avoided insecure attachment. Now, this definitely is the opposite of the insecure one that we just talked about. And it's really interesting to see how they develop. But avoidant attachment is somebody who has trouble getting close to other people. They have trouble, developing that intimacy. They have trouble trusting other people. They have trouble depending on the other person. So those people usually tend to be very independent. They like to do things their own way. They do it on their own. They don't depend on other people. They don't even necessarily trust other people to do it. They like a lot of personal space. They're not somebody who clings on to anything. It's usually the more space, the better in the relationship. And oftentimes it's just because they're fearful. They're scared to develop that intimacy, and they're scared to express themselves and rely on others. And so for them, it's just the safest option is to be as far away from others as possible and not to cultivate those healthy relationships. And now this usually stems from a parental relationship where that kid was very, I don't want to say neglected, because then it would kind of go off on the other point that we just made, the other attachment style. But this is usually with a parent that just was not responsive at all. A parent who wasn't very kind, who wasn't very caring, who didn't respond to the kid's needs, the kid's emotion, and the parent themselves was very distant, and they didn't trust their kid, and they didn't show that trust and love in a relationship. And they wanted the kid to depend on themselves, and the parent did things for themselves. They didn't do anything for their child. And this is where it usually comes from. And more importantly, this is very sad for me to say, but this attachment style also develops from the parent who always screamed or reprimanded their child for having emotions. So if the kid was crying or something, it was the parent who had to shut it down. You can't cry, or keep crying and I'll give you something to cry about for real. And this kid couldn't show emotion at all, and they couldn't be sad. And when they did, the parent wasn't comforting. Otherwise, they were just really rude and really mean to their child. And so over time, they just learned that they can't show emotion. They can't trust others. They can't rely on others. They can't develop intimacy. So it's best to just avoid it altogether. So the last attachment style is fearful avoidant, aka disorganized. And it's a combination of the anxious, insecure attachment and the avoidant attachment. Now, this one is a tricky one, and it can often fall underneath the one that is more avoidant, but it really is a combination of both, and you'll understand why in just a moment. So this relationship is developed, or this attachment style, I should say, is developed in a relationship with a parent who was traumatizing and very dominant, and that created a lot of fear in the child. Now, this attachment style, unfortunately, has the biggest psychological risks on a child, or on an adult once they grow up. And this is because they can become very violent in relationships. They can have a lot of mental illnesses. They also just tend to have a really, really hard time regulating their emotions. And this is often because they want the love. They want the secure attachment. They want the attention. They're so anxious. They don't want that person to go. They've clinged on to them. Don't leave me. I'm really insecure. But at the same time, I want to avoid this at all costs. I want to avoid you hurting me. I want to not trust you. I don't want to depend on you. I don't want the intimacy. So it's a little bit of like a rubber band effect of a give and take. And that's why it's called unorganized, because it's a little bit mix of both. It's like, I really want you and I really don't want you. I really want to have this relationship with you, but I'm also super scared to do so. And this often actually happens, like I said, from traumatizing parents, but it can happen from sexual abuse or abuse in general. and from relationships with parents that had no boundaries, no emotions, no care, from a child that was just abused and neglected, and like I said, didn't develop healthy boundaries with the parents. And it's just very tough to understand this kind. And again, they more of a risk in relationships. And I put air quotes around that because we shouldn't really categorize people in that way, but it's very good to know what attachment style we may have so we are able to heal it and move forward. All right, my loves, that is all for today's video. I hope you were able to learn what attachment style you may have, or what an attachment style of somebody you love may have, and that you were able to work through it, gain some more information. And stay tuned for my next videos because I will go into more detail of how to heal and work with each attachment style. See you next time.